Alrighty, Hudson. Hope you're doing well, man. Wanted to get this video over to you from this past weekend to kind of go over your mechanics, compare it to Max Scherzer, who we talked about is a phenomenal example of a driver, which we're going to get into in this video a little bit. But I wanted to compare your mechanics to Scherzer's mechanics, just so we can kind of talk about what's going to happen going forward, what we're going to continue to work on. So without further ado, let's take a look. Alrighty, so very first thing that we talked about in the lesson was the difference between a driver and an accelerator, right? We use Jacob deGrom as a great example of an accelerator because their first movement is towards home, right? What they're trying to do is generate gravity to help them generate more momentum, more power into the throw, right? Versus us drivers, as we talked about, everything they use is ground force, right? So we take a look at Max Scherzer here. You're going to notice here in just a second, everything that Max Scherzer does in this video is taking it first to the ground. And then from there, transfers it forward, right? So always think drivers are about power, accelerators are more trying to use physics, right? Even though pitching is physics-based and, drivers still use a great amount of physics, at the end of the day, what an accelerator you're using is gravity. They're trying to use the physics of Earth in order to get them stronger momentum and power. But we're not talking about accelerators in this video analysis. We're talking about drivers, right? So very first thing that we worked on before we even got to how to become a more efficient driver is this position right here, right? Where we have the tilt this way and we are going back like this, right? The issue with that is a lot of the times what we're trying to do, and if you think about it with hitting too, kind of like what we talked about a few weeks ago, we're trying to build off of our initial load, right? So when you come up like this, we're trying to build a load to go forward, right? Versus right here, what we're doing is we're going back to go forward, right? So what we did and what we kind of saw that kind of got some more velocity out of you in the lesson and better accuracy, in my opinion, was keeping your head, number one, pointed at home plate, right? Because that's going to help you with your accuracy. But what we also talked about was instead of taking this leg back, we do exactly kind of like how Scherzer does. We lift up a go and utilize our hip into this hitch right here, right? Which you do a phenomenal job already, Hudson, of getting into that hitch. But what we don't want to do is go back. We want to, kind of like how Scherzer is, you notice how he's still going forward, but he's loading into his mechanics, right? That's what we want to similarly happen with us, right? So that's the big thing that we really worked on in terms of your mechanics, right? Because if we take a look at this, you land flat, which is perfect. You land in a really, really strong position right here, right? What we can get, and what we also talked about, was getting more out front, right? If you look at where Scherzer releases, his back is faced right here versus our back upon release is way up here, right? So we talked about, and we'll continue to work on getting out in front whenever we are finishing our pitch, because that's going to help with perpetual velocity, and additionally is going to get us some velocity and efficiency finishing out in front, right? The other thing, too, that is really, really important is this arm side, right? We talked about a lot of times what happens is that you will open up and almost kind of like frisbee your pitches, right? So what we talked about was trying to, like we said, finish out in front, but then also specifically in order to help avoid that, we want to keep our front side closed off, how we see how Scherzer does right here, right? How we explained it in our lesson was talking about trying to keep ourselves extremely closed off going towards the bathroom, right? Which is going to be towards this side of the video, right? Because that's going to help us to keep closed off as long as possible and then replace, right? Outside of that, though, Hudson, your mechanics are really, really good. I honestly also liked your breaking ball and your off speeds. We'll continue to work on that, pitch development. How do we get better in terms of, better location for our curveball? Because like what we talked about, your curveball has a lot of bite, which is really, really good, but it's just all about location. But we'll continue to work on that, man. Keep working hard. I think we're really going in the right spot in terms of pitching, but outside of that, man, hope you have a great rest of your weekend.